I'm Katherine Kohler. I'm the director within the productivity engineering organization at Neftlix. I've been there about 6 months now, so I'm one of those COVID new, remote employees. And so my group focuses on the inner loop of development, bootstrapping, coding, building, testing, debugging, etc. And we service several thousand Neftlix engineers. And my group is about 45 people big, with about 5 teams.
Awesome. Thanks, Kathryn. Hi there. My name is Madhav Nair, and I'm the Senior VP of Engineering at Zoominfo. Like Kathryn, I joined the company just about 6 months ago, so I'm also a new hire during the pandemic. For those of you who may not know Zoominfo, we are a go-to-market intelligence platform that provides sales and marketing B2B professionals with data, insights, and the technology that allows them to target their customers. I manage the applications engineering team. We're a team of about 225 people right now and growing to about 300 engineers by the year end. And the company size is about 2,000 folks, give or take.
Great. So hi, everybody. My name is Andrew Lau. First, I want to thank the Elevate crew and the Plato crew for letting us all be here. I'm the CEO of a company called Jellyfish, and I have the pleasure today actually to hear from Kathryn and Madhav on this topic. So super excited. And sitting here from the clouds, I wanted to kind of kick the conversation off here. So as our title was, we're really talking about success for engineering. So I'm actually going to jump right into it and talk about what does success look like for your engineering team? And I'm going to start with Kathryn, just going left to right here on this.
Yeah, absolutely. For me, it's both efficiency and effectiveness. And so it's important that the teams are healthy and executing, but also the execution aligns with the strategy, that they're not off doing something over here. I think the analogy I used last time was making, jetpacks for squirrels or something, right? You want to make sure that they're aligned with the actual strategy. And they're working together, they're collaborating, it's a healthy culture. And the things that we're pushing out the door, or in our case as a central team, are really meeting the needs of the customers. And so that is, to me, what success looks like.
Got it. Madhav, how about for you? I mean, it sounds like Zoominfo is a different business than Neftlix. So does that suddenly just change the conversation?
Not really. To me, it's all about delivering value, right? Success is about delivering value to the business, delivering value to the customers. We also, want to do it fast, right? At the moment of need, with quality, and all your non-functional attributes that we talk about: performance, security, reliability, and all of that, right? So that the users, our customers, meet their implicit and explicit needs from the platform. So to me, delivering all of that with joy, with a happy, engaged, and motivated team is what I would say is true success.
Oh, that's great. Madhav, you used the word value, and I think I'm actually going to deviate a little bit, but juxtaposing Neftlix and Zoominfo, I'm curious, like, Kathryn, how would you define value?
Value for our customers is ensuring that they can focus on the business logic and the specifics of their domain and not get bogged down in the day-to-day of actual development, right? So if we can help people bootstrap, if we can do seamless migrations, if we can support people by having very self-explanatory tooling, and by having more managed experiences, then that's providing value for our end users, which are our customers. And ultimately, the productivity, efficiency, and effectiveness of our customers is our value. It's kind of meta. It's a meta concept, right? Yeah. You're a central team and you're a productivity team, but that's how I quantify value.
I mean, that's really interesting because you've got you've got the consumer, and then you've got your customers, which are this internal, and the engineers that are building for those customers. So you're almost a second derivative here. You're meta here to do that. Madhav, so value for you, I'm guessing, is a bit more straight line, but it's a B2B business. So how do you think about that?
Exactly. It's a bit more straightforward for us. Our customers are the sales and marketing professionals out there who are looking to close that deal, right? So giving them the data that they need at the moment of need, right? When they helping them realize that this company whom they're planning to sell to is investing in a certain technology. We provide them that information at real time, so they get that, right? So the ability to deliver value at that precise moment, I think, is really crucial for us. So yeah, it's a bit more straightforward as compared to the internal teams like Kathryn's.
Yeah. Well, Katherine, and last bit, I'll move on to this question. But if you were for Netflix as a whole, because you're a consumer experience, when you look at the totality of it, does value redefine differently when you talk about to your customers? Like, what do they think about it?
Yeah, I think for our customers, their value equation is: are people finding content? Are they finding content that's enjoyable? Can they, discover quickly? Do they have a seamless service, even in low bandwidth situations, right? So we have two businesses that they primarily focus on, which is streaming, and then on the creative side with studio. Right. And on one side, it's latency, and on the other side, it's being able to quickly, build up applications that support our creative teams. So that's how they would evaluate value. And if we can abstract away all of the heavy lifting around the inner loop of development so that they can really focus on that, then we've done our job successfully.
Sure. Yep. Makes a lot of sense. So I think this almost always leads to the in your title, the term productivity. And I think a lot of business folks take the word productivity from other departments first, where they start, and then they project it into engineering. So I'm not going to let Katherine go first this time because it's in her title. I'm going to actually let Madhav go first. And like, what does productivity mean? Like, if your CEO talks about in terms of sales and they turns to you about productivity engineering, how do you think about that?
Yeah, thank you. I'm always reluctant to come up with one metric and say that, hey, this is the metric, the data point that we're going to use to measure productivity, right? So not trying to dodge the question, but I always try to look at it in terms of a collection of different factors, right? So, for instance, we obviously measure things like your team velocity, right? Your coding days from Jellyfish, for instance, your cycle time, your issue cycle time, your epic cycle time, right? We look at things like what is the time gap between when a pull request is created and when that gets the first comment, right? Is that a few hours? Is that a few days, right? Those things are very interesting to us. So the point I'm making is productivity is not just one metric to us, it's a collection of different things. And the second add to that is it's not just looking at productivity in isolation, because you don't want to over-index on that, because that could have like a negative effect on, say, your quality metric or your time to market metric and so on, right? So I see all of these as dials on the dashboard of your spaceship, right? And you need to keep an eye on all of them collectively.
Got it. So I'm hearing a holistic measure of productivity because of the many inputs and outputs across the team. So Katherine, as someone that runs productivity engineering, how do you frame it?
Yeah, I think Madhav nailed it. So, if you want a job on our team, come on over. Right? And there's so many different metrics go into this. And he highlighted a lot of the really important ones around cycle time, or how long does it take to get a change in, how frequently do you deploy, what's the mean time to resolution when there are conflicts or issues. And then also, how much failure, right? Like, how many times do you inject failure in and need to sort of rectify that? Those are core principles around productivity, but there are also, a bunch of other things like customer satisfaction. That is a part of productivity. If you are building something, but it's over here and it doesn't address the customer's need, then what's the point, right? Like, why even bother? And for me, it's not velocity, it's not butts in seats, lines of code, or any of these other crazy metrics that people have come up with as a way to sort of like, my team's nailing it, they're knocking it out of the park. All of those things can be gamified, right? And so you really want to focus on these metrics as a tool for the team to know where to lean in. Where are they behind? Where do they need to catch up? If you speed up production on features, maybe your tech debt's going to come up a bit, or your bugs are going to come up a bit, and these are all trade-offs. And so one of the hallmarks of a healthy team is treating these metrics as a tool and not as something to sort of game, right? and well, we upped our velocity, but we're not necessarily addressing any of the issues that our customers are having. So that's what it means to me.
Got it. That makes a lot of sense. So let's go the other direction, because we talked about kind of productivity and value, which are kind of more externalized questions. When you look at your team, inside the team, how do you know your team is doing well? And I'll let you define what well means first and foremost. And so, Katherine, please, how do you think about that?
Yeah, I mentioned this earlier, but a team that's got a healthy culture, a culture of learning, innovation, one that's not afraid of risk taking, folks that are intrinsically motivated to do the right thing. They understand the strategy. They're not just, going along and, hammering out requirements, but they really have internalized the strategy so that they can make a lot of those decisions on their own without much oversight. That to me is that kind of nails it, right? People want to show up to work. They're engaged, they're active, they're excited about what you're doing. They want to work together. They want to work for each other. They have healthy collaborations.
Just while we're on it, do you have ways that you actually, how do you dashboard and measure that?
You can tell, right? You can tell. It's a little bit harder when everybody's working remotely because you don't have that opportunity to walk around with your mug like a manager, right? But you can tell when you push new things out, how many people are engaging in that document, how many people are advocating for the strategy, how many people, how are they approaching their work? Are folks moving ahead, or I took this idea and I ideated on it and I was innovative, or I take this customer relationship to the next level because I really care about what's going on over there and I really care about and have internalized the importance of my job. Yep. So they're not things that you can put a quantifiable measure on, but you can definitely tell if you're plugged in.
I was hoping you had this master metric that we just hadn't heard of before.
It's number of smiley face emojis in your Slack channel, right? So yeah.
Which is not a bad metric at all. If I may add on to what Katherine mentioned, all of the above, the element of fearlessness that you brought up, right? I think that's an important metric for sure. I always use this quote from Admiral Grace Hopper, right? A ship in harbor is where it is the safest, but that's not what ships are meant for, right? You want the culture of trying out new things, right? So even during, we have these periods in multiple companies, not just where I am right now, where you freeze deployments, right? And I always try to push back on that, right? Why do you want to freeze deployments? A healthy culture of innovation is when you actually go ahead and deploy, knowing that you've got the right, frameworks around it, your safety nets around it, your dials, your feature flags, and all of that, right? So I really like that point on fearlessness. The other thing I'll mention is you spoke about how do you measure collaboration, right? The only thing I could think of was one thing we have tried in Pockets is the number of comments that you generate out of your pull requests. A healthy team will always have a lot of comments and a lot of adds to it and so on, right? Yeah. So that could be a measure to show that the team is collaborating and talking among each other. But then to your point, it could be conversations happening in Slack and not necessarily in Git. So,
it could also be a really bad pull request, right? Like if there are 1,000 comments in it,
absolutely.
Maybe I shouldn't have pushed that out. That's
yeah.
Everything in context, right? And understanding the full context around it will help you suss it out.
We should retitle this session, Everything in Context. Well, so the context now is we're going to shift because, part of this was actually to talk with the audience around things that they were actually really curious about. And so I'm actually going to switch to some audience questions. So while we've already addressed this will be a speed question. What are your top 3 KPIs that you measure for? Madhav, go.
Sure. Mean time to restore, we spoke about that a little bit. We look at lead time to value, which is issue cycle time. And we also look at change failure rate for quality, top 3.
All right, Katherine, speed round, go.
I'm going to break your speed dating model here. Our org is undergoing a transformation right now, and so we're developing our KPIs as we speak. It's we're evolving our strategy, but I'm sure they will include things like cycle time, where we can measure that, which is the lead time to change. And I'm sure they will include sort of like frequency of deployment for our customers, not for ourselves, for our customers, right? Because they're a proxy.
Well, I look forward to the solution that Neftlix has for us, and you can publish it all via a blog post for all of us to
absolutely
upvote here. Okay, so from Renee, Renee asks, they've heard engineering teams should focus more on outcomes than output, and we touched upon this earlier. But what are good ways to measure outcomes?
Right. Yeah, I can take a stab at this one. So OKRs are a compelling tool if done properly. And the goal of an objective and key result, if written well and articulated and thought through, the key result measures the outcome. It doesn't just measure the delivery. Right. So it's something that focuses on if this piece of functionality, if this feature is meant to drive adoption, then let's look at adoption rates, right? Not the fact that you just shipped it, as a measure of success. But if you're really shooting for like 20% adoption or, increase of, 5% retention, et cetera, then put a key result there and hold your team accountable to drive towards that key result. And ask yourself that "so what" question 1,000 times. Why are we doing this? What is this for? What is the user value? It's sort of like the meta user story, right? I'm doing this for this person so that they can do this. Well, so what? Why? And until you resolve that question, you're not going to be able to really understand what the business value is.
Got it. Well, Madhav, do you have anything to add to that?
That's a fantastic answer, honestly. Very little to add. The only thing I'll add is success to me, again, would happen when every engineer in a team actually asks those questions. It shouldn't stop at the leadership level or at the manager level, right? You want every engineer to question, why am I doing this task? How does it align with the company priorities, with the outcome, the value that I'm adding, right? So that is the culture which you really want in the company.
Yeah, absolutely. And from the spirit of inquisition and what's best for the company, not from an obstructionist point of view.
Right.
Why am I doing this? Why do I have to do this? Why? This doesn't make any sense to me. Can I just rebuild this thing over here? Because that's really important too. Yeah.
I think, Katherine, you're bringing the right spirit. I'll just chime in that it's a, look, we're all in it for these companies to succeed, right? And so this context is about alignment here. And that critical conversation that Madhav mentioned is really the thread there that pulls it all together. So awesome to hear. Yeah. So thanks, Renee, for that question. Heading to one from Chani here, and I'll put this to Madhav first. How do you balance consistency in measurement across the engineering, but at the same time give customizability for each team? Because every team is different in how they do things.
Yeah, that's a good question. Each team, I think, needs to kind of solve for themselves around what metrics are relevant for them, right? I mean, even we didn't speak about the technical metrics, right? We have metrics which we track every week in what we call engineering excellence meetings, right? Your error rates, your throughput, your latency, and so on, right? And for some teams, maybe error rates are more important than measuring throughput or latency. Some teams, it might be a totally different metric, right? So it's honestly kind of horses for courses, right? For different courses, you might have a certain set of metrics, and for different teams, it could be a totally different one. But having said that, right, at the company level, the 3 or 4 metrics we spoke about earlier around mean time to restore, around issue cycle times, and the change failure rates, right? All of that are something which we measure not just at the engineering org level, it's at the company level. That shows the value that the company as such attaches to those metrics, right? So it's a mix of both. You do need to customize, you do need teams to have the freedom to decide what they want in that space. But at the same time, I do believe there are like a handful of metrics which are important and have to be consistent across teams too.
Yeah, great, thank you.
Madhav nailed it. You're hired, man. You're hired. I think, I've seen the fallacy of people try to compare velocity numbers across teams.
Oh, yeah.
I was like, this team's got 85, and this team's got a 40. Why can't you guys work twice as hard so that you're just like, no. This is internal to the team. It's relative to the team. It is a tool for them to be able to tweak and optimize based on what they need. But you're absolutely right. At the corporate level, being able to sort of articulate an absolute KPI or KPIs is really important as well.
Got it. So thank you, Chani, for that question. I think that's pretty cool. I see a question by Naboja around successful team in your opinion. And I think we kind of addressed it earlier, but I just want to give everybody a quick gut check. Was there any other thing that we didn't cover that defines a successful team?
I think we spoke a lot about the culture, about the fearlessness, the ability to deliver value with quality, all of that, right? I think maybe the one thing we didn't mention too much is speed. Because you often get this question, right? Should I go fast or do you want quality? And the answer is yes. I mean, you want both. Right? And
yeah.
You really want to bust the myth that you can only choose one, right? So I think that element of speed, especially in this world we live in, right? COVID or no COVID, the element of speed becomes really critical, and that's something which we haven't spoken about. So that's the one element I would add.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think Madhav should go first every time to answer these questions. He's like laying it up and I'm just dunking the ball. Yeah, you do not have to compromise speed for quality, right? If you put all of these safety things in place, in terms of automated testing, smoke tests, things like that, gates, if you will, if you have CI/CD in place, you can move quickly, and you can move quickly with confidence that it's high quality. I think one thing that I didn't mention is sustainability, right? You need to be able to set up the team so that it is an ultra marathon, right? And I know people use this analogy. It's not a sprint, it's a marathon, right? It's an ultra marathon. You are going to be working on these things for a long time, and you want to make sure that the team stays healthy and engaged and interested and can continue to deliver, like reliably deliver. Yeah.
That's a fantastic point. If I may build on that, right? I mean, it's like different companies often have a push on quality or push on performance because we are lagging behind, right? And then, they kind of forget about it and move on to the next one, right? I think focusing on how to get that ingrained in your culture is really important, right? That should be a muscle which you just, okay, you work out for a little bit, you develop it, but then it becomes part of you, right? I mean, that's what you normally use. So I think that's a great, sustainability is really key.
There are going to be cycles, right? It's going to look like a protracted sine wave. There are going to be times when you really have to rally, but there are going to be some times when you sort of mellow out and embrace those times, celebrate the wins. But if you have too high of a frequency, it's like bending a piece of metal over and over and over again. The team's just going to break, right? So you have to really think about it. And as leaders, we need to be able to provide that stability and sort of like, calm down, let's come up with estimates that are bottoms up. And so we all can commit to these things and not put too much, pressure, but we still want to move fast, right? Yeah.
Well, I think there's some good management tips here that I probably even go beyond engineering that you guys are saying here. And so on that thread, I'm going to build a question from John actually asked, how do you ensure the insights you're drawing from your team is the unfiltered truth and not what people just want you to hear, right? And I think I'm going to add to that too, just there's also in that same vein around bias as well too, right? And all of that. And Katherine, I'm gonna let you go first this time because you can't have Madhav kind of.
Dang it! All right, okay. I think all of that comes down to leadership and building that trust on the team. Where if you are speaking the unvarnished truth about how things are going or things that are going wrong on the team, then it's advantageous for the group to address those issues. So having a culture of feedback, a culture of reflection, putting in place retrospectives where people talk through what went well, what didn't go well, and not from a place of punitive measures, but a place of curiosity and learning and improvement, and modeling the behavior where people come to you with issues, you don't lose your mind. You're like, thank you. Oh my goodness, let's address this. And follow through, right? And speak to them, sunshine these things in a way that is collaborative and inclusive and just, create an environment where people don't feel weird coming to you with issues. They feel compelled to come to you with issues or resolve the issues on their own, right? Because you've built that kind of a culture with your group.
I would say to what end, right? As in, if people are hiding stuff and if it's not reality, how long will that continue, right? Ultimately, it's going to reflect in your quality, in your speed, in the value that you drive, right? So it's going to show up at some point in time, right? And we spoke a little bit earlier about gamification. Again, I know that comes up in a lot of these conversations, and I realize that sometimes it will happen in organizations, right? But again, is it like 5%, 10%, right? If it's more than that, if it's like 25% of the org or 50% of the org is gamifying stuff, then there is a core problem, right? If you assume that you've hired the best talent and your team is great, then I think the onus is on you as a manager to kind of figure out why are they acting that way. Maybe these are not the right measures. Maybe we have the wrong metrics, right? Or maybe the metrics are not explained in a way that the team understands why they're important, right? So I think the onus is on me as a manager to kind of, once you assume that you have a great team, right? You kind of have that as the assumption. Then it's on us to kind of simplify that. Maybe we're making it overly complicated. What is this MTTR metric all about? Why is it so important to the company? So it's on us to kind of break it down in a way that the team understands it and gets it, right? So then this conversation on gamification and varnishing and all that just goes away.
Yeah, and if you set up the right environment, but you still have this problem, then you address the problem. Right? You talk with the individual or individuals that are having this issue, try to get to the root of what's going on. And if you still have a problem, I mean, there are ways of dealing with that as well.
Absolutely.
So a little bit around, we're talking about hiring here. So Vinitha actually talked about, you both have and are part of very large teams. And Vinitha asks, is it required for your engineering managers to have been a developer in the past, right? And also keeping the new landscape in mind, do you feel like they have an engineering degree, right?
I need for them to have development experience. It's lived experience. I don't think you can come at it without that. Having non-traditional background, I think that's fantastic. And so I don't bias for or against. I do find different skill sets in terms of like scrappiness, leaning in, more creative problem solving in some cases when you do have a non-traditional candidate. And so for me, you know, opening up the net to that, I think is really important, but I do want people to have had development experience, and probably some pretty robust development experience, particularly at Neftlix, where we hire, you know, senior developers and above. I think it's really critical.
Yeah, I really don't have anything to add to that. Exactly what Katherine said.
This is the easiest panel. Yeah, we should just have a basketball team. Actually, Eli actually has a question here that actually probably is more towards Katherine, but I think Madhav, you have anything to add in our last minute here. Infrastructure teams are somewhat separated from kind of product deliverables and product metrics, right? Which you alluded to there, the second derivatives, you would call it. Are there any kind of further best practices you can share about measuring the success of this infrastructure team and thinking of it that way? I know infrastructure is slightly different than productivity engineering, but it's in the same vein.
Yeah, I would say one big one, and that we're focusing on as well, is migrations, right? When you're building out platforms and you have adoption within the group, within the company, you want to make sure that when you need to update those platforms, it is not a multi-year effort, right? You can do them in a way, so you've thought through the whole software development lifecycle when you have conceptualized this new platform in a way that you can, you know, change the engine while you're flying the plane without people really noticing it. And so, you know, for us, taking a look at how frictionless are those migrations across the board, it's a really good indicator of how well we've done our job and how we've thought through this.
Got it.
The add I'd have to that is, I think Neftlix does this paved road kind of approach, right? In which you've got everything that you need and how many vehicles are on the paved road, whereas how many are going off on their own doing other stuff, right? Maybe
yes,
that's the measure.
Absolutely. Keeping people on the paved path, keeping people, having the on-ramp to the paved path be pretty obvious and a nice experience, right? And once they're there, understanding the benefits of staying. But still meeting customers' needs, right? We're not locking you into something that's not flexible. We are providing, you know, security. We're providing testability. We're providing updatability. A lot of things that you don't want to have to worry about day to day, so you can focus on your actual work. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, I think we're timing out. So, Katherine, Madhav, I wanted to thank you both for sharing your thoughts here. It was wonderful to chat with you guys. And
thank you.
Yeah, and thanks for Plato. Yep.
Thank you, Plato.